your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. It's a pleasure to have you with us, along with our very special guest, entrepreneur, speaker, writer, and he is an Army veteran, John, and it is Krotec or Krotec?
Krotec, but you can call me anything you want, Doc. I mean, I've been called all kinds of names. And
how about this?
Yes, I've got Teflon on today, so we're good.
It'll be yes, sir, and no, sir.
Well, hold it now. I'm an NCO, and we work for a living, as the officer would say. You can just call me John.
Okay, wonderful. Hey, thanks for being with us.
We're honored. Thank you.
Very, very interesting conversations here. Some that I have had with people, and we've gone, pardon me, through a lot of iterations in that regard, especially when it comes to life and living. A couple of our slogans, John, are new paradigms for a new world, giving people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true.
Nice.
And looking for those new ways of living, because the old ways don't work. Just look around you and you can see they don't work. And this is coming from me. I consider myself a metaphysician more than anything else. But you are a visionary entrepreneur as well as a speaker, founder of something called NeoMasculinity Solutions, actually. And I want to first get a definition. What is neo-masculinity?
Good question, and thanks for having me here. I would, if I could have a moniker for today's episode, of course, it's your show, Doc. I'm humbled to be here. I would just say that none of us are alone. Whatever we're doing in our lives and whatever we think we're challenged by, we're not the only ones going through that. But there's a Google definition of neo-masculinity, and then there's our definition of neo-masculinity. And the Google definition, which is, I guess, targeted towards men in general, tells men, in so many words, that you cannot be masculine. Now think about that. Biologically they are, but you cannot be masculine unless you accept changing social norms. Okay. So we heard that. So, well, what happens if the social norm isn't based in on facts or on biology or whatever it's based on to make it true? You're telling me that I have to lie in order to be masculine. So we felt there was something not quite right with that definition, right? And we could get into toxic masculinity later. So what our neo-masculinity is, an empowerment company. It's NeoMasculinity, not .com, .solutions. And what we're doing is we're empowering men to embrace their masculinity, not exclusive of women, but and give them the tools to be able to analyze unreliable information, which honestly is destroying the world, 5 different types of unreliable information, and to protect not only their families, which is the primary mission of a man, is to protect his family and his loved ones from threats.
Mhm.
So, it's kind of a roundabout answer, but the reality is we give tools to men to empower them to live their gender roles, not gender identities. That's a whole different topic, and we're not going to brush into that.
No.
But the primary role, we've gone back, we've looked at vintage gender roles, and men are the protectors of their families, their loved ones, their communities, their countries. We protect. But
Mhm.
when a man is emasculated or doesn't feel like a man, and what does he do? This whole concept of toxic masculinity. What does he do? He doesn't fulfill his mission in life. So you have a bunch of angry men, you have a bunch of angry women, you have a bunch of families that are not being protected and loved ones not being protected, and you create a world with so much angst and animosity and hate and anger and frustration because of that, because men are not fulfilling their role. And that's what we end up with. So we want to make a difference in the world. We really want to give tools and instruction and information, reliable information. I think we identified 6 types of information. One is reliable, and the other 5, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, noisy information, which is social media. Now we have AI information. So
Yeah.
think about that. We're being bombarded 24/7, 365 days a year with information that is either not truthful, distorted, outright lies, and it creates what we're seeing now in the digital space, madness.
What's funny is I was working for a multi-level marketing company back in the mid 90s. I stepped out of radio for a while, and I was producing their their product, the cassette portion, the audio portion that went along with a pamphlet. And one of the things that the gentleman who narrated these, that voiced these, used the phrase over and over again in these, that information is power. And I'm going to say that now, let's see, 10, 20, 30 years later, that is no longer true. Information isn't power. Information isn't even information. And unfortunately, I may have gone a little too far over the edge here a little bit. From this standpoint, I agree with what Abraham Lincoln said. From what I understand, this was maybe 2 or 3 weeks prior to his assassination. He said, and I quote, "Don't believe anything you read on the internet." All right, no laughter. So the reality has been for many years that, or especially early on in the 90s and early 2000s, that was kind of the case. And then things started to level out a bit. You could kind of trust where you were going, what you were doing. But in the last 10 years, forget it. That's why the only references that I have to social media are when I post these programs on Facebook and or sorry, Elon, Twitter. It's like I'm originally from Phoenix, Arizona. We have a baseball team. It's called the Arizona Diamondbacks. And they play in a stadium called the Bob. Oh, no, Richard, it's not called the Bob. Go away. It will always be the Bob to me, Bank One Ballpark, always. That's where they won the World Series that I can now claim as my hometown, Phoenix. I'm come from a World Series town because I love baseball.
Nice, nice. I do too.
But see, here's the problem. We keep changing definitions of things. For example,
Oh my gosh.
George Carlin does this wonderful bit. And you being in the military, I'm sure you can appreciate this and understand it. He says back in World War I, when you had soldiers coming back, having all kinds of issues and problems, They said he's suffering shell shock. Accurate, to the point, you understood what that meant. His body has been shocked by all of the bombardment of the waves of destruction from the explosions around him. And then they moved on into World War II and they changed the name. I can't remember what it was. And then in the Korean and Vietnam conflicts, they changed it again. And then in the present day, it's no longer shell shock. It's now PTSD. And that kind of sanitizes it. And it's like, wait a minute. No, it was shell shock. I'm sorry. That's what it is. And we need to deal with it. We do the same thing with all these other things. Now, for me, from my standpoint, because we're not going to go there, I don't care who or what you identify with. What is your name? Just, I'm only going to use your name. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not judging you. I'm not passing judgment. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I just want to know how I can speak to you so that we can have a conversation without one of us feeling offended. And people ask me, so which do you prefer, Reverend, Doctor, Rick, Richard, Dick? And I always say, hey, whatever, but Richard is what I've always gone by. So, thank you very much. That seems to be the core of a lot of what we're dealing with here, is the fact that on this program, I regularly, as we did right at the front, ask for definitions of terms so we know where we're coming from. The problem is that the definitions keep changing, and you probably could pull up a dictionary, John, from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and today, look up the same word. Definitions probably changed, or they've added new definitions, which, then you got to clarify your terms when you're having a conversation. So you almost have to have a dictionary and thesaurus at hand, which you do on your smartphone, in order to communicate with someone. Because you and I, we might be, and I don't know this, and we're not going there, but you and I could be on opposite ends of the religious or political spectrum. So what? What you are wanting to talk about here, and I'm going to let you jump in here and do so, is this aspect of what it means to be a man. There are two men I'm going to mention. One is Tim Allen, the comedian, who years ago, and I loved his humor, was criticized like you wouldn't believe because he was being anti-woman. Well, obviously, they weren't really listening to his humor because he wasn't saying that he was against women, and so forth. He was saying that guys need to be guys, having a guy's night out, or going out on. My father would go regularly with his male friends, who we called uncles. They weren't uncles, but nonetheless, out into the desert with a cooler full of beer and steaks and this and that and the other. They'd camp out over the weekend, have a great time. And then my dad would come back and, he's a great guy. Then there's the other guy that I want to mention. And unfortunately, I was greatly disappointed by this gentleman, Robert Bly, who wrote Iron John, which was my men's group primer in 1993. There were only 3 members of this men's group, but we would go hiking. And we read from the Iron John about the catabasis, the bottom of the well, so to speak, and that you really can't start climbing up until you hit bottom. But I also saw a video, maybe you saw this too, John. It describes what a man really, really wants in a relationship, specifically an intimate relationship. And it's nothing that most people would think of. What they really want, spoiler alert, they want respect and appreciation. And I want to say, and that's all they really want. That's all I really want. I'll bet you that's really all you want. Sure, you can have all the other stuff, but if you don't have the respect and appreciation of the person you're with, you don't even want to be there. Talk to us about your perspective on those two elements. Is that really what you want, is what a man wants from what you've learned?
Well, you know what? There's a lot to unpack there. You've touched upon a lot of good topics.
Well, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So, information, the old adage, information is power. And I totally agree with you. That assertion is dead. And I'm just going to change it up just a bit. Reliable information, having reliable information is power, right? And conversely, having unreliable information is a weakness. Because if you know the truth, chances are whatever decisions you make in your life are going to be the right ones. And if you know the lies, chances are the decisions you make in your life are going to be the wrong ones. So it's important to change that around what Abraham Lincoln said. And I'm no Abraham Lincoln, I can assure you, but having reliable information is power because it can help us to make really good decisions in our lives. Then you got into, and I totally agree with you, the changing of definitions of words. And I know you've noticed this, doctor, that they'll come up. Let's just take the word authenticity.
Okay.
All right. That's the flavor of the day. And whatever networks we're watching, whatever groups we're watching, authenticity, 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 authenticity. And they beat the word up so much that it's not authenticity anymore. It's something else.
Yeah.
And I've seen that, and you've seen it, and millions of people, your listeners have seen that. Well, they'll take a word and beat it so much the word doesn't mean anything anymore. They've just, what's integrity? Oh my gosh, everybody's integral. Really? Really? Integrity doesn't mean truth anymore. It means something else because they've used it so much that they've taken it away from the true meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we talk about, yes, what do we want to be called, right? What name? Now the big thing is labeling people.
Yeah.
And once you've been labeled, and everybody knows that a label, oh my gosh, he's a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So automatically, because we've been using these labels so much, you get an image of what that means.
Yeah.
And all of this labeling of each other. Why don't we just say, like you say, I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just another human. But no, you can't say that. You're a Republican. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. And what that does is it breaks down the human condition. It creates chaos and confusion and animosity and fear. We used to say the only way you can heal, one of the only ways, there's lots of ways, but one of the ways to heal is to get rid of the labels.
Here, here.
Quit labeling each other. You and I, you mentioned the Diamondbacks, right? I like the Tampa Bay Rays. I think that the Devil Rays used to be but anyhow, you and I could come to fisticuffs about whose team is better, who made the right play, who made the wrong play. And in that confusion and that animosity and that, Diamondbacks suck. What we forget is that we both love the sport of baseball.
Here, here.
So they magnify our differences, and you talk about what men really want. Absolutely, we want respect and we want appreciation. And so what happens is they take us away from what being a human is all about, which is collaboration and interacting and working together and trying to find solutions to make our lives better and the people's lives around us better and the world a better place. And it sounds woohoo, but why not? Why can't we lead? Why can't men lead? And I'll take that a bit further. Please. About men, appreciation and respect. Absolutely, we want that. But we have to act accordingly if we want to get that. So men have to return. One of the best books I read in college, way back in the day, right, was in a marketing class at business school in Tallahassee, Florida, FSU. I'm a Seminole. I couldn't understand. I was young and dumb and 18 years old, and I just thought I knew everything about marketing, right? So why is this teacher required reading giving us Amy Vanderbilt's Book of Etiquette in a marketing class, right? I got to tell you, Doctor, that book ended up being one of the best books I've ever been able to use in my entire life. Amy Vanderbilt's Book of Etiquette. So if a man has great etiquette then he's going to get the appreciation that he likes to have and in that respect. So start acting better, man. Pick yourself up a copy of Amy Vanderbilt's Book of Etiquette and start today.
Yeah.
Your language, your behavior, your virtues. And I'm going to take that another step. What we also desire and what people desire, this is just what I think, right? Oh, we're thinking now, right?
Oh, look out.
Oh, look out. Oh my gosh, you and I are going to create something magnificent. Truth. People with as rough as it can be, men and women, even our children, our teenagers, our young adults, our bosses, the people that work for us, if we have employees, they want to hear the truth. That's all. So here's one of the challenges, though, in today's world, because you and I can go back a few years and we were raised on things like we're always back on square one, right? So you and I, January 1st, we've made our resolution list, and I'm going to quit eating so many hot dogs per month. And I go for a whole string. I go 37 days without eating a hot dog. And then I break down. It's a mistake, right? And I eat a hot dog. So I'm not back on square one, which basically is telling you you're a failure over and over and over again because you're back on square one. No, I'm on square 37. I've got 37 days of victory. So that's a myth that we've been taught over generations to disempower us and to make us perpetually feel like we're losers. No, you could go 1,000 days without a drink. You wanted to quit drinking, and on day 1,001, you go out with a friend, like you were talking about your dad wanted to hang out with his boys, and we have a beer. You're not back on day one again, square one. You're back on 1,001. So why don't we start addressing these myths and these hoaxes that we've been raised with? You know, and real quickly, the battle of the sexes. Oh, this one I love. The battle of the sexes. Women are different from us. We're different from them. It's got to be a struggle. It's got to be a battle. Yeah. Oh, and if we have a disagreement, it's okay because the sexes battle. I say, and I challenge men and women, why not think about the collaboration of the sexes? How many divorces have occurred and how many families have been damaged because people have fallen into that trap? She's a woman, she's never going to get it, and she's going to go, he's a man, he's never going to get it. And rather than having the courage to work on their issues and collaborate, they just fall into the hoax that this is the way it's supposed to be. So we talk about leadership, not just for men, but it also is for women too. We need to be who we say we are. We need to be human, and we need to not follow, which is getting us all in trouble now because people are falling into these propaganda, anyhow, things that are not true.
Right.
And we need to be able to reject the stuff that we hear and work together to find a solution to whatever the challenge is.
Yeah. If I was to state something rather emphatically, first of all, I was born and raised a Catholic, which I am proud of from the standpoint that I never ran away from or rejected the church. My mother made a point of making sure that didn't happen, and here's the reason how that happened. I was a paper boy delivering Sunday morning papers, and I came home one Sunday morning after delivering those huge papers way back when, and I went to bed to get some rest. And she comes in and says, "Hey, it's time to get ready for Mass." And I said, I really don't want to go. And she's, "Okay." Now, in previous Sundays, it was, "I don't care." And it wasn't until I got into my 20s when I sat down with her, I says, "Why did you do that?" And she says, "I didn't want you to push away from the church." Now, present day, my mother and my late father, when he was alive, they got to a point where they no longer wanted to be a part of organized religion because they saw the damage that it did. Didn't mean they didn't believe. It just meant that they had no use for it. And I didn't either, especially after working for 15 years at a Christian station.
Right.
I went when I was young, still living at home. I actually went with some of our neighbors living next door to us to their church service. They were Mormons. Now, I say it that way because if you know anything about Mormon teaching, Catholics and the Catholic Church is referred to as the whore of Babylon. But we kids didn't care because, first of all, we didn't know that. And we were just kids. We didn't have those separations. We didn't have those labels. Anyway, my mother made me go to mass right after I got back from that service because she said that didn't count. But then I went on as I grew, I was curious. And so I started studying different philosophies, as I like to call them. In the 90s, I was a Baha'i for about a year and a half. I've studied Buddhism. I've studied a lot of the religions. I'm trying to make a study of Islam and all of the other different philosophies. Not interested in the Jim Jones version or the Pat Robertson or the Jerry Falwell version or the Ayatollah version of. I want the truth. I want the truth of what these philosophies really teach. By the way, someone made a joke the other day to me, John, that they have never heard of a radical Buddhist activist. And I'm thinking,
I don't think I have either, but
wouldn't put up with that, I don't think. But nonetheless, I had to laugh at that. But I have been studying these for decades. Do I understand them all? Heck no. I'm still trying to figure it out like everybody else. But the reality for me is that because I don't have all the answers, I turn to people such as yourself, John. And I'm not saying you have all the answers. You're not my guru. But at the same time, you've had an experiences I haven't, and I could learn a heck of a lot from you, regardless, or maybe even because of the fact that we might be on different ends of whatever spectrum you want to list. I want to ask you about this whole aspect. We're going to jump right into this as soon as we get back from our pause here. I want to let our listeners know we're talking with John Krotec, and we're talking about NeoMasculinity Solutions and NeoMasculinity. Is it .net?
It's .solutions.
It is. Wow, that's a long one. .solutions. Usually, no, I'm sorry, it can only be 3 letters, and it can .net and .com. All right, NeoMasculinity.Solutions. We hope you'll go there, find out the work that he's doing, and get involved in whatever way that you can, whether you're a man or not, or you're a woman or not. And we will continue that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, along with John Krotec and NeoMasculinity. John, let's jump into this aspect of toxic masculinity. From your perspective, what is it? And obviously, it doesn't sound good. And maybe there's a vaccine we can take. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to offend.
Where's my head go on that one, right?
Exactly. But what can we do to, I don't want to say minimize, because that means that you and I men have to change our behavior. And it's like, but we're good guys. I mean, I even wrote a song called I'm a Good Man, Doing the Best I Can. John, what's up with this thing called toxic masculinity?
Well, great question, and thank you. By the way, just to backtrack a second, I was raised Catholic too, and I remember altar boy, and I remember catechism, and I remember how we were under strict orders not to snicker in church and things like that. So, but anyhow, I was so glad that I had that foundation.
Me too.
And I confirmation and communion and all the really nice things that I learned about and the reason why. But it wasn't long ago that we started hearing the word masculinity with toxic. And I never really started to think about it until I started to see so many emasculated men not fulfilling their duties as a man. And we had talked about it earlier that a man's primary purpose is to, let me even back up more. Let's just say you and me are living back in the caveman days, right? We're sitting around the fire. The ladies are in there with us. Our children are in there with us. We might be wearing bear pelts. I don't know. But we hear a noise outside, right? The women don't grab the spears. The doctor says to John, hey, John, get your spear. There's something going on out here. We need to go check it out. And what do? We go outside, we identify it's a saber-toothed tiger. We get toxic for about 5 minutes. You get his attention, I sneak up behind him, or vice versa, or whatever it is, mastodon, saber-toothed tiger, and we take care of business, right? We protected our family, which is what men naturally do.
Mhm.
Okay. So then we speed up, the threats start to change, saber-toothed tigers die off, mastodons. Now you have a tribe here, a tribe there. But now we're living in an age where the threats are way more pervasive and way more insidious. And it's called the threat of unreliable information.
Mhm.
So a man has not lost his role. He's still the protector of his family. So a man, okay, so that's where we're at. So, but if you can disempower the man, if you can emasculate the man, if you can make a man feel like he has no purpose, that everything he does to be masculine is toxic somehow. And we see this over and over and over again. We started to see this in our research that men weren't stepping up to the plate. So we think that that whole concept of toxic masculinity is to disempower men on a larger scale because now we're getting information online. But if a man is disempowered and he doesn't protect his family and he doesn't protect his loved ones, then their families and their loved ones are wide open for mass manipulation. And why is it that back in biblical times, when an army beat their enemy, what did they do? They created eunuchs. They emasculated the men and they took away any resistance to whatever they wanted to do. We're just seeing it in the digital world now.
Mhm.
And when a man feels emasculated, the research that we did, he gets angry, he gets frustrated, he gets violent, and then we end up with a world full of chaos, families splitting up, the claim of toxic masculinity. But real men, and I'm going to challenge all the men that are listening today, real men use violence as a last resort. Anything. We will go to the ends of the earth not to get into it with somebody, unless, of course, it's a physical thing and it's immediate. But the reality is real men are not toxic. So we want to empower men to embrace their masculinity and like we've said a couple of times, protect the ones they love. It's not that hard. And this has nothing to do with gender identity. That's a whole different topic, maybe another show. This is about gender role. Let's just say you're a single dad. For some reason, your marriage didn't work out and you're raising your kids. You have, custody of them for whatever reason. You're going to have to exercise not only your masculine role, but you're going to have to exercise some feminine roles, nurturing things
Oh.
that moms. And that doesn't mean that you want to be a woman. All
Mhm.
that means is that you're embracing other aspects of the human organism that are needed in order to complete the cycle. And the same thing with a woman, a single mom raising children. You're going to have to embrace vintage masculine roles to complete the circle and to raise the family and protect your kids from threats. Doesn't mean you want to be a man. It just means that you're fulfilling a role. So we want to return to those roles, the vintage roles, and we want to give people the tools to be able to analyze information and at the same time fulfill their roles as if whether they're a man or a woman. It's not that hard really to do. It just takes courage and something that you kind of touched upon, the open-mindedness.
Yeah.
We cannot get anywhere unless we're open-minded. And we can say, oh yeah, we're open-minded, but look around. There's a lot of closed-minded people out there these days, and they'd rather punch you
Mhm.
because you disagree with them than try to find a solution that both sides can live with. Um,
And what's interesting too with some of these folks, and again, it doesn't matter where they're coming from. You can use your logic, your problem solving skills, your critical thinking skills to try to explain to them I don't want to say how they're wrong, okay? Because we don't want to go there. We want to bring them into the tribe, if you will, into the fold of understanding that what they have been believing is not reliable, is not coming from reliable truth. Unfortunately, even when they say the words, you hear that one character from one of those movies who says, "Do you hear the words that are coming out of your mouth? Do you really understand what you just said? You just agreed with me. You just," and they'll go, "No, no, 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 no. No, because I believe blah, blah, blah." And I saw that within the confines of the Christian station, the ministers, the pastors, the individuals that were there manning the phones and that kind of thing. And I even got called on the carpet once by one of the programmers who had a live call-in program called "Give Me the Bible" from an organization, a church called the Church of Christ, which is almost diametrically opposite of Catholicism. And he says, "I don't want you talking to my people. They're not there to debate with you or to talk with you," and so forth. And I'm sitting there thinking, hey, I'm just trying to get answers to my questions. And I can't talk to you because my logic is flawed. I'm not saved. I'm not ready to meet God by this gentleman's words exactly. So I got to talk to somebody else because I don't believe the answers that you're giving me make any sense. They don't make any sense. And getting outside of the philosophical discussion, from in politics, what you're telling me doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle, red, blue, green, purple, orange, yellow, it doesn't matter. And so what I'm hearing is that these things just don't make any sense. That's what I love about science and education. And I've talked with a number of scientists over the years. Science is an art, and it's not laid in concrete. And we know this, especially when we think of, oh, I don't know, some guy in Catholicism. His name was, what was it, Copernicus? Who said the earth was not the center of the universe, and he could prove it. And now today we recognize that, though there are still those who believe this is a flat earth. Okay, I'm still waiting for you to prove that to me. In any event, sir, the dilemma we have. No, please go ahead. I'll let you.
No. This is a very lively conversation, and it really lends to authenticity in a way that I wish we had more of in our conversations. You reminded me of a movie with Jack Nicholson. I think it's a Marine Corps thing. Something happened, and in court he says, "You can't handle the truth."
Yes.
And and he was adamant, but I'm going to take that and transpose it to today's world because it's true. What we've found in this research that I've done is when people hear the truth, it creates, these days, probably not like it used to, but animosity, fear, anger, frustration. And if we just took a moment when we heard something we didn't necessarily believe, and we're going to get to intuition in a second, but if we just took a moment to listen to what that person is saying, took a deep breath, got less reactive, imagine how much better our behavior, this animus between each other, would get better or get reduced. Yeah. And so we talk about science, right? The second law of thermodynamics. I love that law.
Yeah.
Which basically says that all systems, given time, and I'm paraphrasing this for listeners. There might be some rocket scientists listening, so you know this better than I do. But exactly. So that given time, fall into chaos and conflict and disorder, and it's a universal scientific law that given time, any system degrades. My postulation is this. So what do we use to counteract that? We use probably first intuition, which is universal given, God-given. And that's that, like if you tell me something, and I'm not going to go into any issue now, but if you tell me something that raises the hairs on the back of my neck and gives me goosebumps, because I know it's not true and I can prove it's not true. If we don't clue into that gift that God has given us of intuition, then going to the next step, you brought it up, scientific method, critical thinking, going to this gray matters, then we're sunk.
Yeah.
Use that God gift to go into those next steps. And you mentioned logic and reason. And then, of course, the last one, common sense, which people seem to have just thrown out the door with the bathwater. Where's the common sense?
Yeah.
And this is rhetorical, but we can handle the truth. We're humans. We have a brain. And
Well,
even though we've been indoctrinated to maybe let me look at that closer.
mhm.
Doesn't sound right. I'll get back to you on that. And I promise I will.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, but take the time. If you're getting your news on Facebook, that's all I'm saying. Consider the source.
Mhm.
And do your own research. Don't be intellectually lazy. And if you're the man of the house, it's your commission
Mhm.
to check out if what you're hearing is real or not. And then, ladies, if you have a weak man in the house, then help him out. You work together. You don't have to battle. You be the one to pick up the gauntlet and resist or reject what you're hearing for untruth.
Yeah.
It's too easy, Doc. It's too easy for us to do these necessary things to protect the people we love, the
Yeah.
family we love, the country, the city, the company, whatever it is we love. We're commissioned to protect it.
Exactly. We're talking with John Krotec, and we're talking, well, you hear what we're talking about, and he is with NeoMasculinity Solutions. We'll be linked to that website as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan along with John Krotec, and John, you've raised some very interesting points in our last segment there in regards to these different brain elements, and this is what really boggles my mind sometimes with people who claim to be, and I'm not passing judgment, please understand, but they claim to be believers. They claim to understand what the message is. And I say, no, you don't, because you're not using, there's a passage in the Old Testament that basically says, let us sit down and reason together. Well, how do you do that? Where does that come from? It comes from the brain. You say we were made by God, which means we were given the power and the privilege, if you will, of reasoning together, not with pitchforks on either side of the table or spears or guns or bombs, but with calm heads and cool hearts, if you will. Cool means just bring the temperature down in the room a little bit, And there's another phrase, and I think this does apply sort of kind of in a way. A phrase I came up with years ago, and especially when it came to, and I used to get intellectually involved in a lot of the stuff I would hear on the news, about our secret services and our espionage and so forth. And the phrase that I came up with was this: if there is if there are no secrets to keep, then there are no secrets to keep, which means we don't need these secret service agents and on and on and on. But we have taken the position that there has to be, and I say this because in my lifetime, there hasn't been a decade that's gone by where this country has not had or manufactured an enemy. And that's just my perception. I'm not saying it's true. It's just my perception. And it's almost as if we are always looking for, and this is the vernacular from Christianity, we're always looking for the devil under every rock. And someone told me, they said, if that's what you're looking for under every rock, guess what? You'll find it. However, if you're looking for God under every rock, guess what? You'll find God under every rock. And it all depends upon what you're looking for. Now, I'm not negating, number one, your service and the service of other people who have made the decision to do that. I understand. I would like to believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you wish you didn't have to, wish that we could live in a world where, as it was stated by someone many years ago, we could all just get along. Uh, and it seems to be getting worse and worse from the standpoint, not only locally, but internationally as well, that our level of an attempt to understand one another and even be diplomatic is like, and that brings us to the word you used at the end of the last segment, trusting that still small voice. You can call it your intuition, your gut feeling. We promote on this program something else, John. We ask people during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within and listen to that still small voice. Expound on your perspective on that, the still small voice, the intuition, however you want to refer to it.
Well, I'm gonna thank you for asking that question and a lot of good points that you raised. And to me, human intuition is the universe's fail-safe system. It's like we were given, there's a reason we get goosebumps, or like when somebody tells you something and you go, that doesn't sound quite right. You fly into Rome and a guy opens up his jacket and he's got all these watches, which are authentic Rolexes, and you know that they're not. The intuition is God's fail-safe system
Mhm.
to be able to give you that first aha moment. I don't trust what they're saying. I got to look at this deeper. It's kind of like gray matters, right? Gray matters. And what is gray? Gray is that brain inside of our skulls that we've been gifted with that allows us, if we don't use it, somebody is going to hijack our thoughts and our behaviors, and they're going to manipulate us into doing something that may not be kosher for our existence, even as a species, or as a person, or as a family, or as a city, or whatever it is. You've been blessed. We've all been blessed with the greatest computer in the universe,
Oh, yeah.
the brain, and people are working hard to take over that.
Mhm.
As men, the protectors of ourselves, but also of the people we love, we need to start using it. And that's what that whole intuition thing is all about. Okay, that's the first marker. Okay, he said, telling me it's green, but I was raised knowing that it's red. I got to look into this and find out what his modus operandi is. So, rather than take somebody's word for it, if you get that feeling inside, and you've been given that by God,
Mhm.
that intuitive feeling that I just flew into Rome and this guy opens up his jacket and he's got all these watches. If it doesn't feel right, that's what God has given us, is that first intuitive notion that this is just nonsense. You
Mhm.
walk away. I can tell you right now, there's a lot of things in my thought processes that I've had to change. Maybe not, well, I did want to because I always want to live by the truth. And there is a universal truth. We know this, Doctor, don't
Mhm.
we?
Mhm.
There's a universal truth. We may think it's this way and we may think it's that way, but if we actually take the time to converse and
Mhm.
to let down our animosity towards each other, about, he's white, she's black, whatever they've tried to create between us. And I always believe the power is with the people. That's what God's given us, the power.
Mhm.
The universe has given us the power. If it doesn't feel right, I would say 99% of the time, maybe 99.99% of the time, it's not right. And you need to take a look at it. Um, that's all, so we've been gifted with this gray matter. I think we had a show one time, or I heard a show called Gray Matter. But we've been gifted with this brain, which makes us so different from every other animal on Earth, living and breathing animal. And we need to start using it. And if we allow others to hijack our intelligence, which everybody has the capacity to be better than they are, if we give that up and we fall prey to the forces that want to manipulate us so they can, for whatever reason, we can speculate all we want,
Right.
But you talk about war and you talk about, and I'm a veteran. Why do we have to kill people?
Hmm.
Why?
Yeah.
Because they look different than we do, or we're being told that they think different. But I'll bet you that if we were to get a group of men and women, adults, open-minded, if you will, and we were to sit in a room and we were given a list of issues that we had to work out for us, but also for the people we love, we would probably do better at finding solutions than the solutions that we're being given right now. And that is I'm throwing down the gauntlet.
Hmm.
Figure things out on your own.
Yeah.
Learn how to do your own research. Oh, pray. We talk about praying. Um, we're not alone. We
No.
are not alone in this world. We've got billions of people to rely on, but there's also spiritual forces that are out there as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Tap into that. There's a huge universal consciousness. And we talk about war and combat and all this, and I wore the uniform. But imagine if we had love in our quivers, or we had bullets
How
uh,
about the bazooka bubble gum?
bazooka bubblegum. There you go. Great analogy. Or we had, imagine if we did things a little bit differently. If we looked at this human condition, this human existence, as something more than just he said, she said, or I'm a winner, you're a loser. Imagine if we truly, now we're getting into some woo-woo stuff, maybe, but
No.
imagine if we were to use our hearts
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of our wallets or instead of our clubs.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ones they used to beat, the different tribes over the head.
Right.
Imagine if we were, and I guess what I'm getting at, Doc, is I'm getting at, imagine if we were to use our brains, if we could just take a deep breath. Have you ever heard something that I know you have? So your listeners, and thank you for listening to this show. This is a great conversation. Imagine if, have you ever heard something that just doesn't sound right?
Now,
That
I'll give
just
you a prime example.
go ahead.
I'll make it quick.
No,
Two-
no.
2007, 2008, we were told, these were the words that I heard coming out of the speaker regarding our economy. We have never been here before. All right. I mean, they didn't even compare it to the Great Depression of the 1930s. By the way, my father was born in 31. And he never was aware that there was, quote unquote, a depression. I mean, it was what it was, and he was a kid, and so on and so forth. So they used those words in 2007, 2008. And of course, I'm thinking, okay, well, everybody's always talking about the economy, free enterprise, capitalism. And of course, companies live and die by the decisions that they make, and so on and so forth. And of course, there were these corporations, global corporations, that they said were too big to fail. And it turns out they were failing. So instead of using the capitalistic free enterprise formula of if you make a mistake, you pay for it, nobody else does, what did they do? They bailed them out. That was the first part of this. And number two was they used exactly the same solutions to solve a problem or an issue that they said we had never been here before. Why would you use the same solutions for something that we've never experienced before? Same thing with COVID, and whether, regardless of where you are on that spectrum. The reality is, I was cheering when they shut the place down. And I thought, if we just follow these requests, these mandates, 6 feet apart, wash your hands, wear a mask, we're going to be through this in like maybe, 2 months. It'll be over because we'll stop it in its tracks. However, people got impatient. They started to complain and moan and groan that the government was trying to control them. And so they said, to hell with you. And they began to hold all kinds of events and gathering people and so forth. All right. And right or wrong, that's what happened. but we had never experienced it before. I wasn't even alive, let alone a thought. My father wasn't even alive the last time we did this, and that was in the 19 teens with the Spanish flu that circled the globe. And before that, I think it was Typhoid Mary, but that was in the 1800s. And so I'm thinking, wait a minute. What was it that one scientist used to say? That you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. Now, some will say, well, but it was a biological thing. No, 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 no. You don't understand. And this is where you say we go into the woo-woo stuff. I'm going deeper. We have created all of this individually and collectively. We did this to ourselves. There's no victim here. And yeah, it was biological on the material world. But you and I both know, John, it says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made manifest. All right. Into creation, into the material world. So where does the word come from? Thought. So it's a thought. So if you think, and this is what I love about one of the other.
I like the word think, by the way. I like that word.
Think. Yes, thank you. I have a book called Choices, 5 Steps for Life. And I was sharing this with one of my guests. And of course, folks, it is available on Amazon. And I says, there's that saying that, you are where you are because of all the choices you've made in the past. I said, yeah, that's true. And I said, and of course, the other side of that is you will be in the future where you want to be based upon all the choices that you make today. And he says, well, yeah, except that you have to cast this into the mix. The choices that you make today are based upon your perception of what you think the future will be. And over the previous 10 years, at least minimum, and it's been said earlier than that, we've had presidents and legislators and medical people who have said that there are these viruses, these contaminants in the planet, that bird SARS and the bird flu and the this and that and that, and they will run down a list of them that we've got to prepare for and so forth. So they're priming the mind for the eventuality that one of these things is going to cut loose and wipe out a good portion of the planet. Well, we were fortunate that it didn't wipe out a huge number of people, but sadly, it did take some of our loved ones too. But it all started with a thought. And you talk about using the gray matter, that gray matters. I love that. I love that. Where are your thoughts today? It's like if someone wants to be a prepper because they think the apocalypse is coming, I say more power to you. But could you keep those thoughts to yourself?
Exactly.
Right?
I don't want to die today. I want to go a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Whatever I've been gifted with. Yeah.
And even one of our intuitive people here on our station years ago made the comment about natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, wildfires, etc. She says, take a look at those and ask yourself, where inside of me is a wildfire raging, a hurricane out of control, a twister? Where is the ground shaking within me in terms of what's going on inside of me that I haven't dealt with, that I haven't looked at? You talked earlier at the beginning of our program about being, talked about the definition and so forth of being authentic. From my perspective, that's part of it. If you don't know who you are and what you are made of, how can you honestly say that you're being authentic? And I've got a lot of peccadillos in my life, just like you do. And I've shared some of them on this program. Yes, I've been divorced once before. Yes, I've filed bankruptcy a couple times. Yes, I've done this. Yes, I've done that. I don't think I've broken the laws anywhere that I can think of. Nonetheless, those are also what have made me who I am today. So talk to us about this process of self-knowledge. To thine own self be true.
No, that's great. And wow, there's a lot to unpack there, and it's all good stuff, right? And grade does matter. Your brain matters. It's a gift from God. We have, I guess you could say we have preeminence over the animal kingdom because we've been gifted with language, although animals speak a language, but it does matter. You matter, your families matter, society matters, your town matters. We matter as humans. The whole civilization matters,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That's the greatest gift that we have in the universe is the brain. It gives us and allows us an instrument that can help us not only to protect ourselves, but to protect those around us so we can propagate the species. And by the way, if God or the universe decides that Earth is done, it wouldn't take too much for an asteroid to just come and we're gone in an instant,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
then what matters? What matters is you,
Yeah.
us. We matter. Having reliable information is the key to all of this,
Yeah.
right?
No.
Having unreliable information, I'm going to tell you straight up, it's a weakness. And it doesn't take long for somebody that has the truth to listen or to listen what you're saying, or they're watching what you're doing, and they can tell within 45 seconds if you're a person to be believed or not to be believed, if you're a person that needs to be helped or not helped. And if we go by the precepts of the Bible, I know this isn't, well, maybe, love is the greatest gift we have. The power to critical think and the
Mhm.
power to love and imagine, but love doesn't make you money on the bottom line if you make bombs. So I don't want to create any enemies here.
No, no,
But the
I,
reality is that we have to think for ourselves. Thinking for ourselves is not a weakness. It's the greatest strength that we have as humans.
mhm.
Reliable information is power. And if you're a man or a woman and you have reliable information, you can solve any challenge, whether it's affecting you or your loved one or your family. You can solve any challenge that comes your way. And Doc, you know this. All your listeners know this. Humanity, human civilization itself, because of the internet and a lot of other things, darkness,
Mhm.
man is geared towards the darkness rather than the light. We have some serious challenges.
Mhm.
And it's always been this way, but now there's a medium that allows us to connect almost instantaneously, but it also allows certain forces to put information out there that's destroying the family unit, that's destroying our communities, it's destroying our cities and our schools and everything else. And isn't it time that we start using our gift from the universe, which is that thing in each of our skulls?
Mm.
Don't be intellectually lazy, people. I'm throwing down the gauntlet. Be smart, be intelligent, love the people around you. If we work together, it sounds so cliche, and yeah, maybe it is woo woo, but if we work together as a species, as a family, as a couple, a school, whatever it is we do together as groups of human beings, if we work together, we can solve every challenge that comes our way. And it doesn't always have to be at the end of a bayonet
Right.
or with a needle.
Yeah.
We can work together to make this happen. So I say collaborate.
There's an element of the military, regardless of branch, that I absolutely love. I wish we didn't have to have them, but we do. And it actually brings that element out. I've heard it said that as abhorrent to socialism as many politicians are, the military is a socialistic system. You don't do what you want to do, you follow orders, or you aren't a part of the group. But the part I love, and if I'm wrong about that, John, you correct me. But the thing I love about it is these two phrases: I've got your six and no man left behind. And that when you are in, let's say, boot camp and you are starting to bond with these guys, especially if you're not doing what you're supposed to doing. And I remember seeing the whole story of Full Metal Jacket and so forth. And you're just really making it tough on everybody because you're not following the rules. So the drill sergeant's going to pound it into everybody. And eventually you get it and you make the turn. And that brings all of you together as one unit. And I wish that we could bring that into the civilian world to say, look, you want your individuality. That's okay. That's fine. You are who you are, but you are responsible to this community. We need you and you need us. Can you share a little bit of your perspective as a military man in regards to what I'll call the concept of military community?
Well, you make some great and valid points, Doc. I will say this. There is one caveat.
Okay.
Different militaries operate with different standards.
Okay.
And I would have to say that under a communist regime or socialist, in its strictest sense, their soldiers who serve don't necessarily have the autonomy that you find in the freer countries, the capitalists.
Right.
It used to be, we're trained in a way, it's free to core is what it's called, but
Okay.
we're trained in a way if we lose a captain, we're trained in a way that the sergeant knows how to do the captain's job, so to speak,
Mhm.
task wise. If
Right.
we lose all the command, the system in this system we practice here in the States is we can fall in and we can accomplish the mission. So there is a little bit of difference. There's a caveat between different, but
Sure.
yes, if we don't have esprit de corps, if we don't exercise teamwork, then mission is why even have a mission?
True. Yeah.
There's no reason to have that mission. So I would say that what you said is true, that there's a certain, I couldn't just hop in my Jeep and leave and just go anywhere I wanted because I had signed and made a commitment, in this case to the U.S. Army, to do what I said. I was under a contract and we fulfilled the contract. And so I would say have a contract with yourself. Have a contract with yourself, whether you're military or civilian. Even as a civilian, you can still practice esprit de corps in yourself. Don't you want to know the truth? If something doesn't sound right, don't you, and it gives you the heebie-jeebies or you get goosebumps or that we talked about the hairs, don't you want to look for the truth? Isn't that what we're after? Like we talked earlier, you're the Diamondback guy, I'm the Devil Ray guy, and the truth of the matter is that we both love the sport of American baseball.
Absolutely.
If
Yeah.
we could find common ground, we wouldn't need ICBMs. If we had dignity, if we respected the dignity of others, as long as they're not trying to kill us because some warped ideology, and that's another show. But if we could collaborate, and I know it's a tall order, and it sounds like maybe some utopic, dream, but it
Mhm.
isn't because sometimes the worst enemies can become the greatest teams because they put aside their selfish aspirations and they're looking for the good of the group. Now, that might sound like socialism or because then you always have the human organism, but why not do something differently?
Yeah.
Why do we have to do, why do we have to stab each other in the back just to get ahead? And that does happen.
Hmm.
Then we get into topics of, well, some people are more motivated than others, and I get that. And what does critical thinking actually mean? And why are some people intellectually lazy and some aren't? I would just say this to your listeners and to us as individuals seeking improvement, right?
Hmm.
And working with others is challenge yourself. Look in the mirror, right into your eyes. Step outside of the denial. There's nobody around.
Hmm.
You're all by yourself, I don't know, kitchen, bathroom, wherever you're at, and ask yourself this. And this is no army commercial. Am I living my life
Yeah.
the best human being, husband, wife, brother, sister, teammate, am I living my life the best way that I can? And if each of us challenges ourselves while we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, right? If we each challenge ourselves, it's a tall order because of the intellectual laziness. If we challenge ourselves to be the best that we can possibly be, not all the time, we're going to make mistakes,
Mhm.
then I can guarantee it that the world, your world, maybe around you immediately, your family, anyways, is
Mhm.
going to be a better place. It
Abso-
just is.
Absolutely. John Crockett is my guest, and we are talking here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D, and he is John Crockett, and we are talking about NeoMasculinity Solutions. We hope you'll go to the website. We'll be linked there. John, we're going to have you back because we've got a lot more we can talk about on a lot of these different areas as well. We can go in deeper if we choose to do, even into the woo-woo stuff. Okay, it
Which
isn't.
doesn't bother you or me. I know that. Yeah. I
Uh, have you back?
appreciate I appreciate, well, I appreciate the opportunity and I appreciate all the listeners. You got a great show and I look forward to the future, but I'm taking it one day at a time. We've got a lot of work to do as leaders and you as a podcast show host.
Yeah.
We got work to do and I know we can do it if we collaborate and work together.
Well, Greg Braden was on this program some time ago, and he used the comparison between, and there was actually a study done between competition and collaboration, and they judged basically the productivity, the quality. All right. There was more productivity, more quality in collaboration than there was in competition. As much as our system certainly encourages that. But again, if you make the mistakes in your area and your business or your whatever goes down, that's on you. No one there to bail you out. They'll be there to support you, just like my family has been there. So we encourage you to do that. Hey, John, I have three final questions that I want to ask you that I ask all of my guests here on the program. Before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. We're streaming live at those times at am1290kzsb.com. We are also podcasting on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and guess what? We're on YouTube. You can watch these conversations, and I hope you will. We'll be linked to our guest's website as well, and we hope you'll click subscribe as well as notification, so you'll find out more about what it is that we are doing and our guests are doing as well. My book, Choices: 5 Steps for Life, is available, and it is available at Amazon in paperback and hardcover and Kindle. Audible is coming your way soon. And we also ask that if you could leave us a tip, we would appreciate it. PayPal. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And on the homepage of richarddugan.com, we have two links. One takes you to Amazon for the book, Choices: 5 Steps for Life. The other one takes you to PayPal, where you can leave us a tip. When we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also will encourage you one more time before we wrap up to take some time during the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within and listen to that still small voice. And with all of that being said, we go to the first of our three questions. And the first one is, who is John Crockett?
He's an innovator and somebody who really cares about the human condition, about those around us. Somebody who uses his brain. That's who he is. It's the greatest gift we have that we've been given, and why not share it? But share it for positive things.
Right. No, absolutely. Second question: what gets you up in the morning?
My dog. No, what gets me up in the morning is to get up and to be able to experience the gifts that God has given me. Not to take anything for granted, and to realize that each day truly is a gift. We don't get very many of them here on this realm, anyways. And why waste them? Why not do something positive? So I get up and try to fill as much as I can, Doc, with as much as I can, but of a positive nature. I want to help people.
Hmm. Well, we are glad that you were there to do that. Final question is, what was your best day?
Oh my gosh. The best day, gosh, I've had so many best days. It's hard to really pull one out. But the best day is probably the day that I got married to my wife. Um, she changed my life in so many ways. She has knocked me off my horse, so to speak, on a lot of occasions, and she's taught me how to be humble. And I think humility is it's something that we all need to wrap our arms around sometimes. We don't know everything, and she's reminded me of that on several occasions. And in doing so, she has taught me the skill of patience. And if we can all be just a little bit more patient with those people we love, those
Mhm.
relationships can be so much stronger.
I will tell you, the universe has done an incredible job over my lifetime of 65 years to keep me humble, because it will throw up things that will basically, um, what's the phrase that I use? I get my comeuppance every so often. And I remember I am only here because of thousands of other people. And obviously, the first two would be my parents, who I'm also very grateful for. So I do my utmost to stay humble, because I really don't want to have that 2x4 upside the head by the universe. It's not fun, but I make it through. Thank you again, John.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to our next conversation. And thank you to your viewers and to your listeners for tuning in to a show that could change your life.
Well, I hope it will. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to all. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy, because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.